you first have to get you back. And again, to get you back, that's conditioning. When you get you back first, and you're now at this level, people want to line up with you. Think about it. A lot of you are dealing with breakups, and you're kind of in a rut, you're in a fog. No one wants to be around you. And the decision to be in a relationship is an emotional decision. It's not logical. You can't take a PowerPoint presentation and say, oh, you're going to want to be around me because of A, B, and C. It doesn't work like that. People either want to be around you or they don't, based on how they feel when they're around you. So if you have a relationship that's not going so well, you can have all the concepts in the world, but if you're not enjoyable to be around, good luck with that. That's not going to work out very well. You can have all the best qualities in the world, but if someone doesn't enjoy their experience with you, that's not going to work out too well. But to get yourself back there, you can't concept your way there. That's a conditioning. That's your ability to control the way you feel, okay? Go to refocusonhappiness.com. What you want to do is you want to click the button at the top, contact Lance. Very, very easy form. When you go there, you'll put your name, your last name, your email address, and your phone number. And I will get in touch with you in just a few days, okay? Just be a little patient. I got a lot of people I work with, but I'll get in touch with you in 72 hours maximum. But after you do that contact Lance link, feel free to scroll around here. Again, Steve Martin has a great phrase. He says, be so good at what you do, people cannot ignore you. If you scroll down, you'll see testimonials from psychologists, doctors, zillions and zillions and zillions of past clients, including medical directors, et cetera, et cetera. So like I said, I'm making this so obvious for you, what I represent for you, what I believe. The only reason you would not do this is if you're a glutton for punishment. So yeah, feel free to take a good look around. Again, I'm gonna make it very clear what I represent for you if this is something you're serious about, okay? Awesome. Look forward to speaking to you soon. Roger, what made you sign up for this program?
So I would say I signed up because during that time, for the longest time, I was in this mental rut and unable to kind of let go of a lot of things in the past. And it was just kind of like an ongoing cycle. So when I saw your webinar, it was like, it appealed to me. Like what you were saying was pretty interesting. And I was like, you were addressing stuff that I didn't really see anywhere. And so I was like, I'm going to give it a shot to see what you're all about.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff out there, when you really look at it, it's a bunch of Band-Aids. Like it's just really all it is. They don't address things at the core. When you address things at the core, your life starts to move in a way that's enjoyable. You get more done. And the irony is you can actually move at a more, more chill pace. So it's really more enjoyable.
Those are like the most important one. But, I think to kind of add on to that, just more so like building that confidence back up again, because, when you're in that mental rut, you can't be yourself, and you're in this like bubble where you're just stuck and you feel like you can't go anywhere. So I guess to add on to that, like just confidence again, build that confidence again.
Gotcha. So if we talk about confidence, where were you, where were those areas you're like, what, I just can't seem to get past this, this barrier? Like what were some of those beliefs or what were some of those beliefs or hurdles you're trying to work through where you just didn't feel like how you knew you could feel, but you're just like, I'm just not able to get beyond this? Where were those blocks for yourself?
It was like a long battle of like logic and emotion. Like logically, you can read a lot of stuff. Like logically makes sense. Like, okay, like I need to get physically and mentally more stronger. I can go to the gym. I have access to it. Logically, that's the right thing to do. But it's like emotionally, I couldn't really like get myself out of there and just do it. So I think that was like a big hurdle.
I think one of the most interesting things, I think one of my favorite parts about working with you, Roger, and then again, and I hope this really puts a smile on your face, is, one example of something that blocks people that almost everyone can relate to. And it's all encompassing. When we talk about what I'm about to say here, this is something that keeps people really far below what their potential is in every area: love, health, and wealth. And one of the biggest ones is forgiveness, right? If you can't forgive yourself for a business mistake you made, well, that kind of fucks things up in the future. It's like, well, maybe I'm gonna make this mistake again. Maybe my judgment's off, whatever. If you make a mistake in the dating area, like I made this mistake with this girl I dated so many years ago, how will I know if I make this mistake again? Or what did I do wrong? Forgiving yourself and forgiving the other person too. Same thing in health too, maybe. What, I made these mistakes. It's the same thing. So one of the biggest blocks for people is forgiveness. It really fucks up everything if you can't get beyond that in every avenue. So one of the things that really made our time very memorable and enjoyable was forgiveness was something very big for you. For many years, you had many areas of your life where you are not able to forgive yourself, right?
Right.
And this was something, you and I talked about this for years. This was an issue for you, just, being able to let go, forgive yourself, forgive the people that it involved. And then what was awesome was, it was pretty quickly, actually, maybe by week 3, I'm speaking on the phone. And it wasn't even our normal Q&A time. You and I kept a lot of contact during the week, even beyond Q&A. But
Yeah.
also, I think one of the days you and I just jumped on a call. You sent me one of your celebrations, like, cool, let's see what Roger's doing. And I got on a call with you, and you're like, yeah, man, I'm making some videos on forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wow, look at you, man. You're now the forgiveness guru. But what's really interesting about that, and I think everyone can relate to, people want to communicate things like that when they feel like they have something to share. So that is such awesome evidence of how much you shifted. Just 3 weeks prior, you had been dealing with that for many years, trying to release that hurdle, that block to get you to the next level, because you were not able to forgive yourself and the people around you that were involved in those things. But here you are, all of a sudden 3 weeks later, not only were you taking yourself to new levels, but you even felt so compelled to make videos that you thought other people could learn from. Isn't that fucking awesome?
Yeah.
You became a forgiveness guru, so to speak. And that's really what I do for a lot of people. And I'm not even joking here. You really are. Like, if you think about it, a lot of what I really do for you or anybody I work with is I simply release blocks. I simply help you recognize your own power by taking away the things that were keeping you from getting there. Again, energy, emotional states, and different things. But I give you a process for doing that. But that's really all I'm doing. I'm showing you how to release those blocks so you can literally come into your own. And forgiveness is a big one of them. So part of what you and I do each day, that 30-minute practice, is I give you a way that you can actually literally rewire your brain, change your biochemistry so you can get rid of that. And here you are, now a forgiveness guru.
Yeah.
How does it make you feel to look back on that and really recognize how far you came in that one main area that was blocking in so many things in just 3 weeks? Just halfway through our program, here you are.
It's amazing. Like it's pretty refreshing to think that, just seeing the whole journey, because when I first started, it just felt impossible, and now just kind of looking back, it's like, wow, like it is possible. It's kind of like broke that barrier and that belief.
When I speak to people and they first talk to me, and I say, look, the program is pretty simple. We're gonna do one lesson a week. You'll attend one lesson, and then we have a Q&A where we talk whatever you need to talk about. We wire things in. We help you understand it at a level that's no longer a fucking concept. It's fucking real. It's your new truth. And oftentimes people say to me, like, well, it's how, that's just one lesson a week and then one Q&A a week. Is that enough? I feel like I should be doing more. I'm like, and I always say to them, like, who gives a shit how much time someone spends with you? There'll be a lot of people out there, for example, going to psychologists or therapists, right? You might go to therapy once, twice, 3 times a week. And then the next thing you know, you've gone for years and you got fucking nothing. Kind of like in the relationship coach thing you were talking about before. They gave you a lot of stuff. You did it for 2 months. And at the end of 2 months, you had nothing practical. And I always tell people, I say, who gives a shit how much time I spend with you? I'll give you the outcome. Isn't that all you care about at the end? Isn't that all you really want at the end, is the outcome?
Yeah. Right.
When we look at the time you and I spent together, does that not make more sense than ever? Grant, I did spend some time with you too, obviously. But bottom line is, who cares about how you got there, what you think you need to do? How does it feel to know that you actually got the outcome that you wanted?
Feels good. Feels that you again, like new beliefs of what's possible, I'd say.
Are you in some ways, looking back, almost kind of like pleasantly surprised that in 6 weeks we were able to undo years of challenges and blocks with essentially a structure? I mean, again, I did do, we did get on calls sometimes during the week, but really the main structure was one lesson a week, one Q&A a week. Doesn't it kind of almost surprise you pleasantly that we were able to make that type of massive progress with just that structure alone?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Especially if we look at that last program, that other program you were referring to before, $2,000, 2 months, and at the end, nothing really practical.
Hmm. Yeah.
I think it's very important for people to understand because it's like, dude, I mean, you could go to a well-meaning psychologist, therapist, relationship coach, whatever, and they might be enjoyable to work with. They might be a very nice person, but I don't give a
Yeah.
shit how nice they are or how well-meaning they are. I want the freaking outcome.
Right.
So oftentimes when I speak to people, especially at first or in the first 2 weeks, because the first 2 weeks is the hardest, they start to have doubts. Like, well, maybe I need more time with you. Like, no, you don't. Just stay with the process. Understand why the first 2 weeks is the hardest. But bottom line is, who gives a shit how we get there? All that matters is you get there.
Hmm.
Make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
We don't have to make life complicated. A lot of people overcomplicate life, or they keep trying to put their paradigm. They keep trying to fit their paradigm into things. Like, well, it should take this amount of time. No, it doesn't. Just like it takes fucking years to get over something. No, it doesn't. That's complete nonsense. That's just what you've been taught to believe. It's not. Doesn't mean it's true. Just because you have a thought doesn't mean it's true. A lot of people should write that one down. Just because you have a thought doesn't mean it's true. There have been many times throughout the history of mankind where there's been a gap between what people think is true and what the actual reality is, what the facts are. Like the world is flat versus the world is round. Doesn't matter. The truth is the truth. Just because you think something doesn't mean that is the way. Just means that's what you've been taught. That's what you've been conditioned to believe. But what if what you've been conditioned to believe, what you thought, is not even fucking correct? Wouldn't that be
Right.
kind of a shame? And again, best example is time heals all wounds. No, it doesn't. Brain science proves it. You might buy into like it's going to take months to get over blank, but it's only because that's what you want to believe.
Hmm.
You're putting yourself in your own emotional prison because you want to buy into bullshit rather than something that is an undisputable fact.
Yeah. That's one thing I liked about that stuck out to me in your webinar when you were like, time heals all wounds is BS. Time heals the untrained brain. That's
Yep,
what you said,
that's
right?
right.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, people don't understand. They put they're going about the wrong way. They have these draining as hell conversations where every time they end the conversation, like, yeah, you're right, I should do that. And at the end of the day, they don't have that process to actually truly absorb it. So they go through 200 of these, and every day they're only like absorbing a half of a percent. So yeah, in 200 days they feel kind of okay, but that's only because it took us that long to absorb those draining as hell conversations
Hmm.
rather than have a process to actually create those new neural networks so they get the fucking lesson and just go on with their life and be happy and not be just sabotaging themselves or just living through the same model they used to live through. So we're
Hmm.
literally creating new neural networks, new connections, so you can think and feel and live completely differently.
Right.
But if you want to buy into the bullshit and not welcome themselves to the year 2019, well, I can't do anything for that person.
Right.
So yeah, it does take a little leap of faith, but as long as someone stays with it and they also understand, have their expectations managed. Like, dude, you've created this problem over many years, maybe even decades. Don't you think you should give it like 2 weeks before you start? Give yourself 2 weeks to start to see something, to kind of
Hmm.
think of yourself like a big cruise ship, right? It takes a
Hmm.
little bit to kind of turn it around, so
Right.
it only makes sense. But it is what it is, and when people go off into the unknown, it's a little scary for them. And just
Hmm.
like it was for you, the first 2 weeks, like, is this going to really work? I don't know. Like, all that. The only real problem was at that point you hadn't had enough success experiences strung together to say, okay, woo, this is fucking working.
Hmm.
That's all you're missing. So that's why it
Right.
really takes the 2 weeks.
Hmm.
Make sense?
Yeah, definitely makes sense.
Yeah, and how awesome does it feel to know that even as much headway you've made in that one area, really releasing those blocks forever, permanently. And again, now you graduated a few days ago. You're 6 weeks into it. You did the hardest part, and every week you see it gets a little easier. And by the way, this is very clear. This is important for anyone listening to this here because and for you as well. I've told this a million times, man. It's never perfect. You will always sometimes it'll kind of go back for a little bit where you're like, I wish I'd done this. But notice how much quicker you get out of it. You're like, oh, cool. I still am as powerful, if not even more powerful. So you literally keep reaching levels of forgiveness. It's like I was watching this this other pretty famous individual, and he said it really well. In a certain way, as far as when we come through these certain hurdles, like abundance is a hurdle for a lot of people, like really feeling abundant and experiencing abundance. And what he said was essentially, and it's the same analogy here for forgiveness. He said, once you get past that initial hurdle, that you do that your first real expansion where you prove to yourself, holy shit, it really is possible. That's when you really start making momentum. And it's not like you will never be challenged. You might very well be challenged again with those beliefs, but they won't last as long. And it's almost like kind of pushing a big ball up a hill. At first, getting that ball going is hard, but once you get going, you got momentum behind you, and you keep pushing forward. And you keep reaching new levels consistently. And that's really what you experience for the 6 weeks. The hill keep going, but you're getting higher and higher and higher. The view's getting prettier and prettier and prettier. And it's just a very cool feeling to know that you got some real momentum behind you. And yeah, it's not ever going to be exactly perfect because you're a human being. Perfection is not part of your possibility. We're not here to be perfect, but we're here to be the most powerful iterations of ourselves that keep taking ourselves to new levels. So it's fucking enjoyable. And that's what you get to do for the rest of your life. You now have the practice that week on week, month over month, year over year, you will keep reaching new levels in that area as well as other levels as far as how you're able to really embody and believe like, holy shit, this wasn't a mistake, and I feel great about it. And you know what? I'm able to forgive those people around me, and you're not blocked by it anymore. And it becomes a very enjoyable process to the point where, like what you're doing, you want to share with people because you have something to offer.
Right.
So yeah, really all I did for you is if you consider yourself as that person going up that hill, pushing that ball, I'm just removing obstacles. I'm showing you things just to make it a lot easier. That's it. But now you got the momentum. So now it's on you. By the way, on that note, I will be sending your commitment for life thing. Like, hey, you did the hardest part. Now fucking keep working. But now you got it. So now you just have to keep pushing. Will it ever be perfect? No. But you will be just astounded how you keep reaching new levels. You're like, holy shit, even compared to a month previous, I'm at a brand new level. And that gets really cool. And that means you'll want to do more videos. And not just in forgiveness, but in all the stuff you've made massive headway. In courage, in confidence, forgiveness, just all that stuff. Because all during this time, you and I have been literally rewiring your brain, literally reconditioning you so you can feel and think the way you want to feel and think 80% of the time. And even the 20% of the time where you're not there, you now understand, hey, this isn't so bad. I know how to get back there. Yeah, this isn't exactly fun, but I feel enjoyment in knowing that I know the process. I have the way to get there. And that's what gives you pleasure for the long term. That's what gives you like, wow, this is fucking cool.
Yeah.
So you got it for life, man. You just got to do your work now, as you know. And one of the things you're continuing to work on is just more and more just like, hey, I don't need to be perfect. I'm going to be me. I'm going to let God be God. I don't need to be this all-knowing creature. I just have to enjoy the new levels I will and you will reach on a weekly basis. Isn't that fucking awesome?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I'm not fucking perfect. All these things I've taught you, like I'm constantly reaching new levels of understanding. It's incredible. And it's not like doubt never creeps in my head for a minute or so, but I know what to do to get back there. And it's cool. And what's great is that releases the pressure. Like, I've been here before a zillion times. I know the process and I know I'll get beyond it again. And as long as I'm patient, as long as I pull those reins back, I'll be back on track and I'll feel the way I want to feel. And that's liberating, man.
Right. Definitely.
Feel good, huh?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, you should feel fucking great. You put in the work. You got the foundation now. Now it's time for us to supercharge it and really take it, really apply it to those areas that you want. So good question here. This is a great question because I know you tried some other stuff before you and I worked together. What other things did you try before you started working with me, before you enrolled in the Modernizing You 6-week program? Tell me maybe one of the more memorable things you tried and what the result was.
So two main things that I remember telling you about. It was a life coach and another coach that was like a relationship expert. And for like the relationship experts, they give a lot of communication strategies and all that. And this is not to discredit like their knowledge or whatever, but it's just their way of coaching was either asking questions and just giving different strategies. And it's kind of like what you mentioned earlier. It's like a band-aid or a temporary fix, or yeah, basically a temporary fix. At the moment, it may or may not work, but it just felt good at the moment to be heard and maybe give some insights. But then it's like when the session is over and you go back to the real world, it's like you kind of fall back into that cycle. So every time, the time going back to the next session is like, it fluctuates, you know? So it's like, I found myself going in a cycle where nothing was really fixed. It was like, okay, I applied this there, I had a chance to vent, but then nothing was pushing forward. You know, I was still stuck in the same position. So yeah, that was just my experience with like life coaches and relationship experts.
Okay, so if we think about that, maybe maybe for a second, let's just focus on that one life coach you're referring to, without going names, of course, and
Yeah.
one that gave you communication strategies. You have that one in mind?
Oh yeah, like something that they've preach a lot, and which is not false, but it's like, so like I told you before, like detach. You just got to detach yourself. That's the way to.
Right. You just got to detach yourself. Good luck trying to figure that out, but go ahead and detach yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's like it was never they never dug deep into it. It was just kind of like, all right, this is what you got to do, you know. And
Right, yeah.
it's just never fixed. And like one thing I learned from you is like you need to fix the core issue, because if you just give that band-aid, it's only gonna help you in the moment. But it's like when you're put in a real situation, you won't be prepared for the battle or the war.
There you go. Yeah. You know, that's actually great. That's actually very similar to what we were just talking about forgiveness, right? People, like a lot of the coaches out there, just attach yourself. Just attach. You know, be like, it's like, you just need to forgive yourself. But if you can't tell the person how to do it, the actual process, it does you no fucking good. What the fuck
Right.
does that mean? Like, if I could have, I know to forgive myself. I could have forgave myself. I would have done it. So it's like, what's the process? So yeah, and I know a lot of these people are very well-meaning. And if we talk about the communication strategy stuff, you know, the band-aids, I've worked with the best in the world. They're like the number one people. And that stuff is very helpful, by the way. It is, but not if you don't first address the core. The band-aid stuff is cool, have these fun little techniques and strategies. That stuff's great if you have the core. If you don't have the core, well, here's a problem. If you have someone you really want things to work out with, right? Like you really want to work out with them or whatever, or maybe you're having a relationship issue. This is a great example. You might have a strategy, but eventually you have to be face to face with that person. And then here's the problem. If you start getting all fearful, sad, angry, what good does that communication strategy do for you now? Because that shit goes out the fucking window because you can't control your own inner self. Because you're not able to control yourself and your personal state. Well, all of a sudden you can't do the technique anymore because you lose fucking control. Next thing you do, you're yelling, you're crying. You know, it does you no good. Those band-aids are great if you first address the core. And that's really what I did with you here. Now, those kind of things are fucking great. They'll supercharge you to another level, but you have the core. And here's what's cool. Even if the band-aid doesn't work, you're great either way. Isn't that kind of
Right.
all?
Right.
What I've shown you makes you outcome independent.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're outcome independent, you can employ those strategies a lot more effectively.
Right.
You know, it's like baking a cake, man. You do it in the wrong sequence, the cake tastes like shit. I mean, if you don't have the core things you and I worked on first, well, all those band-aids are nothing. You
Right.
got to focus on the core first. Now those band-aids will work. Now if you go back to the stuff you learned from your life coach, a lot of that stuff will be more applicable in the heat
Right.
of the moment. It's like I always tell people, like, it's very easy to be happy when you're in a fucking monastery, when you're by yourself, or you're reviewing these techniques. But as soon as you're on the battlefield, well, good luck.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. So let me ask this here. Oh, again, without getting to names here, or how long did you spend with that life coach, that relationship coach? How long was the program for?
Let's see. 2 months.
2 months. How
Yeah.
much did you charge you for those 2 months?
Like, let me think. 2,000. for, yeah, yeah.
So without going to numbers about what my program is, how would you compare the value of that $2,000 you spent to what you got with me?
Oh, definitely a lot, way a lot more value. I mean, this is not to like discredit what I had before, but it was like, this definitely, basically it aligned with what you promised to deliver. I would say that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Do you after the 2-month program you did with them, do you feel like you got the outcome they promised?
No, I felt like I was still stuck in the same position.
Same position. So you spent $2,000 and still stuck in the same position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay. So after working with me, do you feel like you got the outcome you came in here for?
absolutely. Yeah. And it's like not just the outcome itself, but I think I felt like it's like what you said, like a tool for life. It was something, it wasn't just like, all right, it was, you're just going to get it within 6 weeks and you're gone. But it's like, this is something that can continuously evolve. So I would say definitely beyond what you promised. It was kind of like you get a tool for life.
Beautiful. How do you feel knowing that I don't even have an advanced program? I felt so great about what I offer you that I'm like, when you're done, and you'll be able to continue growing it without having to do a quote second course or advanced course. How does it feel to know that you just keep doing what you're doing and it will keep evolving?
It feels good. Feels it. I don't know how to explain it, but no, it's just good to know that like it's something legit and something that like you're able to carry on your own. And it doesn't feel like I'm trying to I'm trying to find the right word. It doesn't feel, I guess, for lack of a better term, like salesy in a way. It's kind of like
Okay.
it's kind of
I'll take
like
that.
you're confident in what you deliver, and this is going to be it, and you can keep evolving instead of like, all right, I'm just going to throw another product at you, like, and just, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
I don't know. I think I'm kind of butchering it, but I think you know what I mean. It's
Yeah,
just
I mean, like I said, when I work with somebody, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we're connected for life. We might not talk every day per se, but I'll keep up with your progress. I mean, I take a lot of pleasure in it, a lot of joy, and I'm very vested in knowing. Every once in a while, I'll text you like, "Hey, Roger, doing it like we laid out." And if I hear you're slacking, I'll,
yeah,
come down with a hammer per se. But most
yeah,
importantly, that's covered when again, the commitment for life.
hmm
You and I did the hardest part. You and I worked very hard together over the last 6 weeks, and from this point, for the most part, it is in your hands. Just do what you've been given, and it'll keep evolving. That's what's great. I take a lot of joy in knowing that you don't. If you ever do personal development, which is great, it'll be a bonus. You have the practice to make it much more applicable. See, now you can go back to the stuff you learned from your other relationship coach, and now you can make it more practical. You could wire it in if you want to. You have that those emotional states and energy that you're not at the core. You're good. You're much more outcome independent. So it'd be a lot easier for you to employ those techniques.
hmm
Like so now you can go back to some of this other stuff and get some value out of it, which is great.
right.
And you should do that. Compared to what I promised you, what would you say your experience has been? Right, you don't even have to compare it actually. Just bottom line is, how did I show up as far as what your expectations were?
Um, I would say my expectations were met and exceeded as well. I mean, I would say, first off, like you're very knowledgeable, and you were very transparent from the beginning too. So that's one thing I really appreciated. Like you're super transparent, and and showing up, you really showed up, and I feel like showed up is an understatement. Like you showed up beyond like that what the program entails. Like throughout the week, you would check in. Like whenever I told you about my celebrations, you would, you took the time to like FaceTime and just kind of check up and give tips and advice and insights of the day. And no, it was just like you literally like had my back. So
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, you and I, even beyond the once a week that I promised, you and I spoke probably on the phone probably several times a week at least once or twice a week, additional on average. But you were a hard worker, man. I always tell people this. I'm like, if you're in 100%, I'm in 1,000%. You worked hard. You really went out of your way, man. You were sending me videos about your progress on a weekly basis. You really try to get as much as you could from, uh, what you were learning and trying to apply it all around. And then when you came to Q&As, you had a lot of questions. And like I told you, I'm like, I'll make sure all your questions are answered. So most times you and I spent quite a bit more than the hour, like the last call and the time before that. But that's cool. You worked hard, and I told you that. A lot of people don't do what you said. A lot of people don't come in as prepared as you did. Some people are like, oh, I don't really, I have this, and this, and about half an hour until they're done. But you worked hard. You took as much advantage as possible. So I did what I told you I was gonna do. You do your part, I'll fucking do mine. So part of that was because you are as dedicated and focused as you were, which is great. I want you to be, if anything, actually a little critical to some degree. Because I always, whenever I work with people, I'm like, like I told you when we first started, I'm like, dude, this ain't a magic trick. It's a serious program. You will get an incredible reward. That's true, but it's just like working out. You want a six pack, you want to look like Brad Pitt and fucking Troy. You got to do a lot of things. So, so my question for you is, how long before you started to say, holy shit, this is real, this is working, this is clearly not a coincidence? The things I'm noticing, the things I'm feeling, the things I'm experiencing, the way I'm showing up, my interactions, all this stuff is clearly starting to benefit. At what point into the program, how many weeks into it where you're like, you know what, there's a threshold crossed. I can't ignore that something is actually happening at a very clear biological level?
I would say between week 2 and 3. I remember that first video, or one of the videos I sent you was when, after I finished my run, I was like, hey, I feel this like euphoric numbness kind of thing per se. And it was kind of like, oh, sorry, my dad's. Oh yeah, no. Going back to, so yeah, I remember sending that video after the gym, and I had that like euphoric numbness. That's how I described it in my brain. Where it was like, I felt like, like I didn't care about anything. I was kind of like at peace, and I just felt like, I felt like that the problems that I was dealing with didn't really affect me anymore at that moment. So I was like, wait, I'm not sure what I'm feeling. It just felt kind of good, and that's when I started realizing, like, oh, okay, maybe something's working here, something's changing. Because the first 2 weeks, I guess when I first started, it was kind of like I was a little doubtful. Well, not doubtful, but it was more so I haven't really worked out in a while. So like, I think like just kind of like what you said, my body was in shock. So it was like I was doing something that I've never done before. And I think between week 2 and 3, that was when I started feeling a little different. And even though, week 2 or 3, that was when I felt a little different in a sense.
Good. That's such an important one here, because I have so many people come through the front door, and I always tell them, and I told you this too. I'm like, dude, remember, you're working quote unquote muscles or aspects of you've never worked out before, you've never trained, and yeah, your body's recalibrating. When you just like working out, when you first start working out, your muscles get sore, really sore, and it lasts. But as you keep going, as you keep conditioning, your body's ability to become resilient and bounce back quicker becomes quicker and quicker. You become conditioned that way. So I always tell people, and I know I told you the same thing too, I'm like, first 2 weeks are the hardest. In the beginning, your body's recalibrating. You might question it a little bit, like, because your body's, it's like, wow, it could be a lot of things you're feeling. I had one client who was telling me he was having a really hard time in the morning getting up. I have one right now I'm working with telling me he's having a harder time going to sleep. I'm like, dude, you're stressing your body out. You're not, but in a good way. You're doing something you've never done before, so your body's getting used to it. And then the other thing too is like, it's like, usually in the first week or two, because in the beginning you're first doing the workout. Remember, the results come after the workout. I have a lot of people like they question it. I'm like, remember, you've had these issues for fucking years. Don't you think it's not fair? It takes at least a week or two to really start to kick in. So I tell people this, and of course, but once they're going through it, they forget that I told them that. So they start to have doubts, whatever. I got a guy working with me right now who's doing great, but a few days ago, same thing, was having the same kind of doubts. He's like, is this really, is this really going to work? Is this whatever? And I said to him what I said to you. I'm like, how's your last week been? Are you starting to notice these small victories? Have you noticed this, that? And he's like, absolutely. I'm like, and there you go. That's not a coincidence. When we start building a lot of these together, it's a string of small victories that make a big victory. We're like, holy shit, this is real. I can't ignore all these little things that are happening because they never happened before. So that when I have that, I tell them that I ask them the same questions like I would ask you. It's like, what have you noticed over the last week or two? Have you noticed like small little things? Like, yeah, I have, absolutely. Like, well, there you go. You just need to be patient and focus on the fact that even in the last week, you've started to notice some things here. So usually what happens is it takes people a certain series of little things before they acknowledge, like, okay, this is clearly not a coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got a guy working with me right now. Same thing. Like towards the end of week 2, kind of panicking a little bit. Like he's like, yeah, is this really going to work? I'm like, what have you noticed so far? He's like, well, I noticed this, I noticed that. I'm like, you really think that's a coincidence? And I have another guy. He's another guy who's doing really great. Started about the same time. He's now into week 2. He's a little different. He knows he probably crossed his threshold already. But again, most people are like you, like by somewhere around week 2, week 3. But this guy's like, yeah, my sister's like, what have you been doing? Blah blah blah. I'm like, and I said to the guy, I'm like, hey, just so you know, your sister isn't on my payroll. That's not a coincidence. So everyone goes through that. It's like you've never done these things before.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes give it a week or two, somewhere between week 2, the end of week 2 or into week 3. That's when you're like, okay, this is real. But the reason why that is because they have to have enough experiences. This happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, to the point where they can't ignore it any longer. And that's where all of a sudden it clicks in the head, like, okay, this is clearly not a coincidence. For me, with you, when I thought you crossed the threshold, clearly was when you start doing forgiveness videos. Because it wasn't at that point, it wasn't just how you felt at the end of the practice. It was ongoing throughout the day, and you still felt great enough that you wanted to share how you were feeling more often than not. When you start doing that, that's like, okay, clearly you can't ignore that. This is real for him now, because now it's not just about how he felt after the practice. It's such an ongoing thing, not 100%, but enough that he felt the desire to share what he's experiencing. That's when I consider you crossed. So I consider you crossed maybe like about week 3, like towards the end of week 3.
Yeah.
That's when you'd had enough experience. Because with you, it was challenging getting to really acknowledge and celebrate all these victories. You had to have a little bit more than most people to say, okay, I can't ignore it any longer. I mean, I almost had fun with you. I'm like, Roger, you're doing fucking forgiveness videos. What the fuck? Like, how can you ignore that? You don't work for me. I didn't tell you to do those. You're doing it on your own. Why would you do that unless you felt a certain way? And you're like, okay, you're right. So, and since then you've had a lot of other things too, but that's when I consider you cross the threshold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. What you described earlier about your other client, it just reminded me of my journey where like the first 2 weeks, I guess I remember just like every few days I would document how I felt after the gym just for documentation purposes. And I just remember just a lot of things was kind of repeating itself. I was like, man, like I feel good that I did a workout, but nothing's working right now and all that. But I remember just after like that week 2 and 3, I like, okay, finally I can say something different in my vlog.
Right, yeah. Yeah, it's like at this point you just gotta have a little faith, man, and then look at the small victories you've been having. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges I have with most people, getting them to really celebrate, which is a wiring, by the way, really recognizing, okay, this victory, okay, clearly at number 10, I can't ignore it anymore. That's really what it is. And that's why you and I do that a lot in the first 2 weeks, those celebrations. So when you see enough of these things, the way you're showing up in interactions, the way you show up in your life, you're getting more stuff done, you're waking up earlier. It's like, okay, come on, man. You really think that's a coincidence? It's not. But yeah, so the first 2 weeks, it takes enough of those experiences before the person says, okay, clearly, unquestionably, something is happening here. But it's like just stay a little longer. You've gone too far to lose your leap of faith now. But yeah, that's why it takes a little bit for people. It's really you having enough experience to say, okay, I can't ignore it any longer.
Mm-hmm.
It's real. So how do you feel now after completing the course? Like now, like how do you feel about your future?
More optimistic. Now more, I would say, more cognizant and more aware of things that's more been happening, and just I feel more confident in terms of knowing that I have the ability to control and redirect like my thoughts anytime something happens.
That's your power. That's your choice, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah, you'll never ever for the rest of your life be an emotional prisoner ever again. There's no more days, weeks, months in emotional purgatory. You're in control. Yeah, yeah. You might have a day where I mean, the worst I've ever had in the last I don't know 3 years. I've had one day, maybe one day where it wasn't terrible. I was just like, just like a little challenge, just doing the process I showed. I mean, and we're talking the worst scenarios: breakup, loss of a loved one, stuff like that. That's the worst. The problem is a lot of people buy into the bullshit like time heals all wounds. That's not true. You can buy into the excuse that I should feel some way, but that you don't have to. And you've proven it to yourself. And so no matter what that source is in the future, you don't ever have to. Don't let anyone tell you fucking differently. Does not matter. No matter what that source is, loss of a loved one, breakup, job, whatever, you don't have to fucking stay there ever again.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If you stay there, it's because you're choosing to stay there because you're not doing what we talked about. But you're free, man, and you'll have that for the rest of your life, man, and you'll get even better at it. Does it mean you don't have periods of doubt, like small periods of doubt or challenges? No, but it becomes more of a blip. Again, the very first week, I essentially helped you install hardware in your brain, essentially. You can think of it like that. And then we keep firing it, firing, firing. Over time, that hardware becomes an automatic software program. It becomes easier and easier to fire. Does it mean you don't have those challenges? No. It just means it becomes easier to just get back to where you want to be. And that's really what it is.
Right.
And you just get even better and better at it. Not perfect, but better at it. New levels of understanding, new levels of implementing, new levels of embodying, thinking, feeling, being.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, you got this for life, man. Just keep doing your work. Do your part.
Mm-hmm.
This last question. I always love this question. So, who do you think would benefit from this program?
So I have two answers for that.
Okay.
So for one, I would say in a perfect world, I would say this is something everyone should learn. Like this is like foundational things that everyone should learn to live more of a fruitful life. I don't know if that's the right word.
Fruitful is fine.
Okay, yeah, but I would say like in reality, like this is I like how you put it. I would say this is for the people that's like sick and tired of being sick and tired. People
Mhm.
that have intentions to really change their take more control of their life in a sense. So I would say people that are sick and tired and have the intention to improve their state of being